Guys, right now we are witnessing one of the most crucial moments in this war, because Ukrainians just breached another line of defense of Russians, and it was one of the biggest attacks in history against Crimea. And to make things worse, Russia is losing its soldiers on average every 4 months. But more about all this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And to begin with, guys, I'm sorry that I have to speak about this once again, but YouTube again demonetized, restricted and limited my last video. And this is taking into consideration that I fully censor every single combat related footage. So at this point I have absolutely no clue what triggers YouTube employees to take down my videos. Probably it is because I said word MINES way too many times. I mean, I specifically flag my videos when uploading that they are not made for kids. But apparently somebody smart in YouTube decided that every single time I say word MINES, or better let's call them from now on, round and dangerous military devices. For some reason they think that I'm spreading hatred, violence, shocking content, which affects you guys. And so just please let me know in the comments, how do you feel about this YouTube clownship, because at this point I'm very pissed. This is not acceptable and ridiculous, because whenever videos get restricted and limited, YouTube does no longer pay creators for these videos. I mean, just imagine working for the entire day and then somebody with just one click of a button without explaining anything takes away your entire day work worth of one day. But most importantly, YouTube also stops recommending my videos to new audiences. So just please, once again, I'm asking you guys if you can share my work with your friends. And if you are new here or if you have not yet subscribed, just please consider subscribing to my channel. I just simply do not want my videos to stop appearing in your notifications just because YouTube decided so. And as always, if you want to support my work and in return get fully uncensored episodes where I can show whatever I want and talk about whatever I want in addition to all the extra footage, you're more than welcome also to join my Patreon. It starts as little as only $4 for the entire month, and you have 1 week of free trial, so you can see it for yourself if you like it or not. The link to my Patreon will be down below. Thank you so much for your support, товарищи. I apologize once again for this extreme inconvenience. And now let's get back to the video. So yes, let's quickly talk about some good and bad news from Zelensky's visit to the United States and also the lifespan of Russian soldiers in Ukraine. And then we'll talk about the most recent mass attack of Russians against Ukrainian territory and the response by Ukrainians. And first of all, during his visit in America, Zelensky stopped in the Pentagon to meet with the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. It was also previously mentioned that in the next military support package to Ukraine they might receive long-range missiles Attack MC, but apparently the Biden administration did not approve these missiles just yet. But the good news is that within the next days or maximum weeks, American tanks M1 Abrams will arrive to Ukraine, and also Ukrainian pilots and technicians already started arriving to the United States to train and research F-16 fighter jets. Speaking about the tanks, Ukraine will also receive 10 Stridsvagn 122 tanks from Sweden, which are basically the analogs of Leopard 2s. And here is just very interesting statistics, but on average, Russian soldiers, whenever they are conscripted and sent to Ukraine, they do not last longer than maximum 4 months. And as you can see, a very big portion of them is eliminated within even the very first month of them being in Ukraine, which basically tells you that yes, Russia does send heavily inexperienced and untrained soldiers to fight their war. And now let's talk about the most recent mass attack of Russians against the territory of Ukraine, and then I'll give you a brief update from the east and the south of the country. And so this last night, approximately 10 Russian bombers launched more than 40 missiles against cities such as Kiev, Kharkiv, Cherkasy and Kherson, and the majority of these destructions, which were either by direct hit or the debris, were civilian objects. And on this map you can see the areas which were affected and the areas where Ukrainians were able to fully and safely intercept Russian missiles. And just in general, Ukrainians were able to intercept 36 out of 44 Russian aerial objects, but Russians obviously claimed that every single launch reached its final destination, destroying only and precisely Ukrainian military infrastructure. But I mean, if you just take a look at the pictures from these cities, you will see that nowhere in sight there are things such as military headquarters, concentration of Ukrainian forces, or anything like this. All these mostly are just civilian buildings. Ukrainians obviously did respond to these attacks by Russians, but first of all, let me give you a brief update from the east of the country. And before we go there, here's a quick stop in the capital of Russia, Moscow, where once again spontaneously and for no reason, a local storage of building construction materials once again spontaneously got caught on fire by itself. Now we return to Ukraine, and according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians and Ukrainians continue to fight along Kupiansk-Svatove Crimea front line, and Russians are not able to make any gains in those areas. But Ukrainians started actively pushing next to Bakhmut, reportedly making some small gains, which are not yet confirmed by the General Staff of Ukraine. And here is yet another video allegedly from nearby Bakhmut areas, which shows Russians retreating and then being targeted by their own comrades with the heavy flamethrower Solntsepek. And here is another video from Andriivka, which shows reportedly the very last moments before the full liberation of this city. So as you can see, your fortune as a Russian soldier in Ukraine is very unlucky, because either you are sooner or later pushed out by Ukrainians, or whenever you start retreating, you are targeted by your very own forces. Nothing much to do or choose from. But it does not end here, because Ukrainians were also pretty active in the south of Ukraine, and recently a local military headquarters of Russians has been targeted by Ukrainians in Melitopol, and reportedly one commander and more than 10 officers left this earth. Then we have a video allegedly from Zaporozhye front lines, which shows Ukrainian tank T-64 against Russian tank T-72 shooting at each other pretty much point blank. Ukrainian tank was victorious. And as we go to Crimea, if you remember yesterday, Ukrainians using Storm Shadow missiles were able to reach another military headquarters of Russians, which was very close to Sevastopol. And so right here we have a confirmation from satellite images, which show us before and after, and you can see pretty much half of the building is no more. And speaking about Crimea, this last night Ukrainians reportedly did the biggest drone attack against this peninsula in the entire history of Crimea, reaching as deep as once again to the notorious Sevastopol. And as a result of this attack, one of the major targets which Ukrainians successfully hit was the Russian airfield Saki, located right here. And according to the Ukrainian intelligence, this airfield used to have at least 12 Russian fighter jets, Su-24th and Su-30th, one Russian air defense system called Pantsir, which already in Moscow proved to be extremely ineffective, and right here proved to be extremely ineffective once again, and also a small training camp for drones Moja here. And what's interesting about this specific military operation by Ukrainians is that first of all they sent the entire raid or even swarm of drones to overload the Russian air defense system, which most of these drones were intercepted anyways, and then they sent modernized Neptune missiles which reached their final destinations. And besides destroying a lot of expensive military equipment of Russians, at least 30 Russian soldiers were also disappeared. And in the meantime, Ukrainian counteroffensive kept going, so let me give you a couple of words about this right now, which eventually led to Ukrainians breaching another line of defense of Russians. And so, first of all, referring once again to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, the most intense combat activities in the last 24 hours were happening in Zaporozhye, western Zaporozhye region. As we go a little bit down to Chervona Horivka, located as you can see right here very close to Tokmak, Ukrainians reportedly were able to destroy a self-propelled howitzer of Russians along with its unit. In addition to that, as you can see from this map, Ukrainians continued crossing Dnipro river and gaining the foothold on the other side of Kherson region, and Russians, they were forced to bring their first line of defense in the south of Kherson a little bit closer. And as we go to Robotyne itself, where the fights are pretty much happening every single day, Ukrainians were able to advance a little bit closer to the southwest of this city, as you can see from this map. But without a doubt, the most significant event of the last 24 hours is that Ukrainians reportedly were able to breach another line of defense of Russians in the direction of Verbove. Because as you can see from this first satellite image, Ukrainians were able to successfully go over the Surovikin line of defense and put their infantry beyond that point. And also, right here you can see the breach point of this so-called Surovikin line, and also the source of black smoke along the road and intersection, which Russians were shelling. And I mean, why would they shell an empty road? Obviously no reason, maybe unless you are a Russian soldier, then it makes sense. But apparently they were shelling it because Ukrainians were advancing. Besides that, we have another satellite image from the area close by, which shows another point of penetration and the breach in the so-called Dragon Teeth, and also that Ukrainians were able to cross the anti-tank trenches and some even fields. Oops, sorry, not mine fields, but round and dangerous military objects related fields. Don't know if it's Shoigu personally responsible for demonetizing my videos, but if it's you, go away, Shoigu, leave me alone. And if we zoom in on the second satellite image, we can see these breach points just a little bit more clear. I mean, as clear as satellite images allow us to see. And the importance of this breach by Ukrainians of yet another line of defense by Russians cannot be underestimated, because as you can see from this map, Verbove is located on the intersection of some rural roads, which basically will diminish and destroy at least partially the logistics of Russians in this area, while letting Ukrainians be a little bit more agile in their next parts of the counteroffensive. With the ultimate goal by Ukrainians at this stage being obviously recapturing Verbove and all the areas surrounding Robotyne, which will allow them to travel a little bit faster and use roads, they can then advance closer to Tokmak, and then it opens potentially the road for Melitopol in the west and the road to Berdyansk in the southeast. The major, key cities in this stage of Ukrainian counteroffensive. And just like previously, as soon as Ukrainians were able to breach the first line of defense, within just several days, they were able to establish control over Robotyne. Exactly the same right now happened next to Verbove, so we might see some very interesting, good liberations very soon. If you don't want to miss them, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. Thank you so much, Patreons, for your support, and see you tomorrow.